Have you ever wondered why that home renovation or maybe a new feature at work just seems to take forever? Way longer than anyone promised? Yeah, you are definitely not alone. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain and see how the pros build timelines that actually work. It's honestly one of the most frustrating things in work and, in life in general. You set a deadline, you make a solid plan, but somehow you still end up behind. So what gives? Is everyone on the planet just really bad at guessing? Well, here's the secret. For professionals, estimating how long something will take isn't a guess at all. Nope, it's a structured, three-step process. And it's all designed to get you from some perfect world fantasy to a plan that is realistic and, most importantly, achievable. So here's the game plan for how we're going to break that system down. First, we'll talk about the big idea behind it all. Then we'll walk through those three key steps one by one. And finally, we'll see how you can apply this to, well, pretty much any goal you can think of. Okay, let's just dive right in. The very first thing you have to get your head around is that a timeline isn't some prophecy you read in a crystal ball. It's the end result of a system. Think of it like a model that just gets sharper and more accurate the more real information you feed it. And to make this all super clear, we're going to use one single analogy for this whole explainer: planning a huge cross-country road trip. Trust me, it's the perfect way to see how this whole professional process works in a situation we can all understand. All right, step one. This is where it all begins, in what we call the perfect world. It's where you figure out the unconstrained duration. Fancy term, right? All it means is asking a simple question. How long would this take if absolutely nothing went wrong? So for our road trip, this is basically the Google Maps estimate. You punch in your start point, your end point, and boom, it spits out a pure driving time. It assumes you never hit traffic, never see a single red light, and you certainly don't need to stop for gas or food. It's your absolute best-case scenario. Now, the pros don't just imagine this perfect world. They actually build it using cold, hard data. They look at similar projects from the past. They talk to experts, people who've done this a million times. And then they compare all that info to lock in a reliable, unconstrained starting point. And what's really cool here is how they use that data. They don't just take an average and call it a day. No way. They look at the range. So for this task, they can see it might take as little as 5 days or as many as 10. That gives them a realistic window to work with, not just some single fragile number that's bound to break. Okay, on to step two. We've got our perfect world number, which is great, but now it's time for a serious dose of reality. This whole step is about finding all the real-world problems, the constraints, and baking them into the plan. Because let's be honest, the world is anything but perfect. Traffic happens, your key team member gets sick, shipments get delayed. This reality check phase is what makes a plan strong enough to survive contact with the real world. Back to our road trip. That perfect 40-hour drive? Yeah, it's never going to be 40 hours. You have to add in time for rush hour in every city. You've got to account for a possible snowstorm in the mountains. And of course, you actually have to stop for food and gas and sleep. All of a sudden, that 40-hour drive is a 4-day journey. And this is a perfect picture of what the pros are doing. They have a checklist. They go down the list of every possible roadblock. Are the right people actually available? Are there local rules that say we can only work from 9 to 5? Could bad weather shut us down? Every yes to one of these questions forces an adjustment, making the timeline more and more real. So we've got a realistic timeline. Awesome. But what if it's too long? What if it blows past the deadline we were given? Well, that brings us to the final and maybe the most important step: making it fit. For our road trip, let's say our realistic plan gets us there on Sunday morning, but the wedding we're going to is on Saturday afternoon. We absolutely cannot miss it. So what do? We don't just floor it and hope for the best. We have to fundamentally change the plan. This right here is the moment of truth in any project. Your carefully calculated, realistic timeline just doesn't work with the deadline you need to hit. An amateur might just shrug and say, I guess I'll just have to work faster. But a professional asks, okay, what can we actually change to make this possible? And they have a playbook for this. If one single task is holding everything up, can we throw more people at it? If 2 tasks are supposed to happen one after the other, is there any possible way to overlap them and do them at the same time? Or maybe the tough question, do we need to promise a little less and reduce the scope? Each one is a deliberate choice. And it turns out these actions have actual names in the project management world. When you add more resources like money or people to speed things up, that's called crashing. And when you do things in parallel that you'd normally do one after another, that's called fast tracking. These are the levers the pros pull to shrink a timeline without just, lying. And this quote right here is the golden rule of the whole process. You don't just change the number on a spreadsheet because your boss wants you to. No, you have to identify the real-world modifications, the extra money, the new schedule, the different logic that are required to actually make that shorter timeline happen. So why does any of this matter to you? We've gone through this whole professional system, but it's because this way of thinking is like a superpower. And it goes way beyond building skyscrapers or managing huge projects. Seriously, whether you're training for a marathon, trying to write a book, or even just planning a big family holiday party, this process of starting with the ideal, then adding a dose of reality, and then making smart adjustments, that can be the difference between getting it done and giving up. It really just boils down to this simple but super powerful three-step mindset. First, what does the perfect path look like? Second, what real-world stuff is going to get in my way? And third, what can I realistically change? What can I crash or fast-track to hit my goal on time? So the next time you set a big goal for yourself, don't just pick a random date on the calendar. Try walking through these 3 steps. Think about that one goal you've got on your mind right now. What would happen if you gave it a proper professional reality check? Thanks for watching.